All right, today we're diving into a pretty unique corner of the internet. We're going to look at how a hidden conversation about STD risks played out in public online forums all across the DMV. Using posts from 2007 all the way to 2016, we can actually track a timeline of fear, as it was documented in real time by the very people at the center of it.
Okay, so let's get right into it. Before we even touch the timeline, there's one key term we absolutely have to understand. It shows up everywhere in these online communities, and honestly, it's what the whole story really revolves around. And that term is BBFS. This is super important. In the world of these forums, this practice is framed as the #1 reason for all the risk and all the fear that we're about to see unfold. So keep that acronym in your head, because you're going to hear it a lot. And just a quick but really important note here, we're looking at all of this as a kind of historical record of an online conversation. Our goal is just to show you what people were saying and when they were saying it. We're not here to verify if every single claim made in these posts is true. So this story doesn't exactly start with a bang. It's more of a slow burn. The first warnings that were documented were pretty scattered, just pointing to specific dangers here and there over the course of several years. What's really interesting when you look at it this way is just how slowly this conversation was building. I mean, you can see years passing between these early isolated incidents. A report here, a personal story there. It was like a low, steady hum of concern in the background. Now let's see how this thing builds, because in the fall of 2014, that slow hum became a deafening alarm. All of a sudden, those scattered warnings just intensified into this rapid-fire series of scares that basically rippled across the entire region. And the escalation really seems to kick off in Baltimore. Forum posts started popping up warning about a dangerous new practice, where streetwalkers were allegedly removing condoms during the encounter. So this marked a real shift. It wasn't just about disease anymore, but about a direct, non-consensual act. And then, a huge alarm was sounded. A specific provider in Baltimore was said to have stage 3 syphilis and was reportedly still active. This directly linked the fear of a very specific, very serious disease to that practice of BBFS. Just 2 days later, the focus completely exploded into Virginia. A major scare emerged, this time centered on a man who had allegedly infected at least 2 women with HIV. This was big enough that it broke out of the forums and into actual news reports. And the fear just kept on expanding. By November, a whole new discussion trend was documented about the risks of getting HPV from unprotected oral sex, which widened the scope of concern in the DC and Maryland areas. The year ended with a deeply troubling report. A sex trafficking case involving a teenager with HIV, active across 3 states, was described in the source material as a serious wake-up call for anyone engaging in this kind of risky behavior. So this slide really puts it all together. You can see how it wasn't just one thing. It was a whole cluster of different threats being talked about at the exact same time across the entire DMV. You've got syphilis, HIV, HPV. Each one of these scares was just feeding a larger story of escalating danger. Now, after that intense wave in 2014, you might think the conversation would die down a bit. But it didn't. The online discussions just kept evolving, and they started to reflect broader and more persistent concerns. So the new year started with a different kind of health alert. The forums began documenting reports of urinary tract infections, or UTIs, becoming more and more common. This really shows that the conversation was broadening beyond just STDs to include other health issues linked to the industry. Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. Watching how a specific threat evolves over time, that syphilis conversation, it totally transformed. It went from a localized incident in Baltimore tied to just one person into a region-wide public health warning just 6 months later, with sources claiming doctors themselves were now alerting patients to how prevalent it was in DC and Virginia. And this shows the conversation wasn't just happening among clients anymore. It was now happening between providers, which highlights these internal community tensions over safety practices and the risks that came with offering unprotected services. So what should you take away from all this, from this sort of unofficial history? Well, after years of discussion, the source documents repeatedly circle back to just a few core warnings and observations about what was really going on. This slide really boils it all down. The main takeaways repeated throughout the forums were pretty clear. The perception was that unprotected sex was common, that it had direct consequences, like a gonorrhea problem in Northern Virginia,
and that the only real preventative measures were using condoms and getting tested regularly. Ultimately, what this collection of posts creates is a kind of digital echo chamber. It's an unfiltered, real-time chronicle of fear, of warnings, of advice, and it gives us a really unique and, honestly, an unsettling window into a world that often stays completely hidden from public view.
And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. What does this digital trail of fear truly reveal about what's going on? It suggests that there are major public health battles being fought just beneath the surface, and they're being documented, not by official reports, but in the raw, unfiltered words of the people who are actually living through them.